Good evening, everyone. I hope you're doing incredibly well. I am over the moon to invite you all to the book launch of Insiders Outsiders, Hidden Narratives of Care Experienced Social Workers. The part that I keep forgetting to say when I say the title. This is the book. If you don't have it, you should have it. Go get it. So, but seriously, welcome. Thank you for coming. I'm going to kind of run this a bit like the webinars, and I'm just going to ask, not what you've had for your tea, but just, oh wait, there's no chat, is there? Oh, there is a chat. Cool. Okay, sorry. Should have asked that first. In the chat, if you want to just say who you are, where you're from, and how your day's going. Like, this book is mad on the concept of love, and it'd just be good to see how you're all doing. So please do feel free to talk in the chat. The chat that I forgot about. Okay, so could you guys go to the next slide, please? Because I don't have the slides. I'm going to go all Chris Whitty on it. So just the last little while, obviously, you know, the book's already been released. And the initial reaction, obviously, you can see my half smiling, half blinded face has been wonderful, just from some of the authors and some people that have had the book. The reactions on Twitter and social media, it's just been wonderful. Personally, I was overwhelmed with the book. I've only read it once so far because it's so incredibly powerful that it's a bit hard to pick back up, but I will, because I loved it, guys. You want to go to the next slide, please? Thank you. Here are a few more from some of the other authors, and I think everyone, this is a massive assumption, but I think everyone would just agree that there's something in it for all. There's something in it that's relatable, there's something in it that's shocking, there's something in it that's powerful, there's something in it that's educational. And I think all around, the book is just so worth having. Obviously, I'm not biased in the slightest, but yeah. And while we're on this one, I'd just like to say a massive thank you to everyone that has contributed to the book. And just being brave enough to put themselves forward like that. It's a huge deal. So, yep, as I've already kind of said, tonight you will hear from lots of our amazing authors. You can see their lovely faces throughout the night. And you'll be hearing about the process of the book, their thoughts while writing it, and how they felt, and they'll just be having general discussion about what they think is important about it. Now, this isn't on the screen, but I'd just like to say that just take tonight easy. If you need to leave, that's up to you. We would totally understand that. It's not the easiest of subjects, but it is important. But self-care is just as equally as important. So please take care of yourselves. Very, very important, right? Maybe the most important part of the night. There's a chance to win 2 free copies. And Siobhan and Mary will ask you some questions soon. And then later on in the night, we'll figure out who's won. They're funny questions, they're good questions. So keep your ears open and get answering, and you might win a free book. So can't go wrong with that. And if you've already got the book and you win a free book, you can give it to someone as a gift and tell them to read it because it's important. But yeah, next slide, please. Okay, if you don't mind, guys, I'm going to go ahead and read Humpty Dumpty before I pass on, if that's all right. Yep. Yeah. So anyone that's got the book will see my name all over it. Big Davy G from Glasgow. No, David Grimm. Got a bunch of poems in here that I'm incredibly proud to have them in there. And when we were coming up with the running order of the night, we thought maybe I'd read one. Please bear with me. I haven't actually read this out loud since I typed it, so I'm not sure of the camber of it. But it's called Humpty Dumpty, okay? Because obviously, Humpty Dumpty by David Grimm. I will be what you failed to be. The reason they smile when they're old, and I am long gone. You were a savior, a champion, a giant in my tiny land. Though not your intention with your cold, hardened and broken smile, you molded a night with the shimmer of sunshine and an overwhelming darkness. Though I'm not your child, you have raised within me the strength and resolve to embrace what is right, to challenge injustice and to share the light. I will be what you failed to be, an agent for good in a darkened and lost life. So yeah, I'm chuffed with that. I think the title's a bit grabbing, Humpty Dumpty. But thank you for listening. On that note, I'm going to hand over to our incredible ringleaders who came up with the idea of the book and came and approached us all and got us all involved. And now the reason that our smiling faces are here talking to you. So I hand over, without further ado, to Siobhan Maclean and Mary Carter. Please give them a round of applause in the chat. Let's get it going. Legends.
I don't know about being described as a ringleader, Dave. I don't think I've ever been described in that way before. Don't know what I think about that. But okay. So I don't know why it's me that's starting. I said this just before we started the session, really. In the book, Mary comes first every time. Whenever there's anything about the editors, Mary comes first. So I'm not sure why I'm coming first. But the question that I'm going to pose, and you can put it into the chat, and later on, right at the end of the session, we'll tell you who's won the free copies of the book based on who gets the question right. So my question to you is, how many times does the word love appear in the book? The word love appears lots of times. For me, you find such a lot in this book about social work. But the biggest thing you find is love in so many different ways. And I've learned such a lot about the concept of love in social work. And I wonder whether in some ways, I don't want to get over political here, but in England, the Children's Social Care Review reported on Monday, and what we were told was it starts with love. Now, you could say, well, what do we think about the review? But it does. Everything in children's social care should start with love. And we've learned a lot about love through this book, I think. So if I tell you a bit about the background and the process, really, as David said, I was involved in last year bringing together a book which was called Outlanders. So this was a book of hidden narratives from social workers of colour. And the idea of that came from years and years ago when I was first a new practice educator. I read a book called The Black Student's Voice. It was actually a conference report. I learned loads from it, and that was in the 1990s, and nothing else ever came out after that. And I was always looking for something similar. So I decided, okay, let's pull together some narratives, because that's where we learn. As social workers, we learn from people's stories. We take a narrative approach to our practice, and yet we don't take a narrative approach to the way we develop our knowledge base. So if you look at theory books, they're all written by academics with no inside knowledge about social work, even from a practice-based perspective. So Outlanders was really interesting. I got a lot from it, but halfway through that, I realised that I wanted to bring something together that was similar, a set of narratives, but from social workers who were care experienced. I was very fortunate to meet Mary at the start of the UK lockdown when she stepped up to help me learn how to navigate this whole new world, and she stepped up to help me run some weekly webinars. And I learned such a lot from Mary in a very short space of time, and I realised that this book could be really pivotal, and it was a key time, I felt, for us to do it. What was interesting was we were kind of plotting away about doing this book at the same time as there were plans to create this Association of Care Experienced Social Care Workers, and it actually came together. It wasn't planned in that way. It didn't kind of come from there. The two were coming sort of independently, but came along side by side. And so Mary and I then put a call out, and some people we approached directly that we knew that we wanted to contribute. And we pulled together this amazing set of narratives. There's a few poems in there. If I'm honest with you, Mary and I certainly said to Mary, I expected there to be more poems than there were. I was quite surprised because Outlanders has got loads of poems, and I wasn't expecting poems in that. This one, I was expecting lots of poems, and we didn't get very many poems. It just goes to show you don't always get what you think's going to happen. So there's some poems. There's a couple of essays. There's a lot of narratives and reflections. For me, it's a book that's absolutely brimming with knowledge. And I've never said this before about anything. I don't think I said it about Outlanders. I've never said it about any publication I've been involved in. But for me, this is a landmark publication. And I think it demonstrates something about social work that is so important. And I think people will learn from this for many, many years to come. I've been involved in writing about social work theory. I've written lots of academic textbooks over many years. But every time I do some training, I find myself going to and quoting the book. I find myself quoting the authors of this book all of the time, because the knowledge that they've got, the wisdom that they share is amazing. There's so much in here about relationship-based practice, about the use of language, about what good social work looks like, about oppression, about discrimination, about anti-oppressive practice. These are precious narratives. I think that's how we describe them in the book. But they are full of just such amazing knowledge, really shared knowledge. And I think it's a book that can be used in so many different ways. If you're a student social worker, you're going to get a reference from this book for every single essay that you write. I mean, it literally will work for every single piece of work that you're doing. If you're a qualified social worker, there's such a lot of learning in here. It's just full. It's brimming with learning. We called it Insiders, Outsiders. The photograph you can see on the screen is basically when we'd started talking about the title of Insiders, Outsiders. It kind of evolved a little bit. We wanted something that showed it was similar to Outlanders. It was part of this kind of sharing of narratives of experienced social workers, but this time with a different experience. And so we decided on the Insiders, Outsiders. We wanted the book to be a beautiful book because the narratives are so precious. And the cover image was inspired by, it was actually Sarah Jane sent us a copy of one of the paintings that's on the front of the book. And we decided we wanted to use that for the cover. But because we wanted it to look similar to the cover for Outlanders, we had to have two pictures on the front. So we had to go back to Sarah Jane and say, can you paint us another one? And then can you paint us something for the back? So Sarah Jane was amazing, really helped us with that. But the outside cover of the book is paintings. Paintings give an impression. They're not real. They give an impression of something. The inside cover of the book is photographs. That's real. The insiders in this publication have got the real knowledge, the real awareness. The outsiders looking in, we only really have an impression of what it is. And so I think that's what we have to learn. I'm an outsider looking in. I'm not care experienced, but I have just learned so much from reading this book. And I definitely recommend that you do that. We wanted to share with you this photo as well. Mary and I spent the weekend together. Mary, I'll ask you in a minute about what kept us going, I suppose, a bit really within the weekend. But this is a picture taken from where I live, my house. I'd recently moved there. It's literally got no furniture in it. And I realise now when we look at the picture, we've got furniture in that room now, Mary. But Mary and I had these narratives and we put little notes on them and we laid them out and we used them with great care about what order should these come in? How should people read these? How should this wisdom be woven together? And so that was a photo from our weekend together. And I'm going to hand over to Mary now. I'm just going to allow all of these amazing, everybody that speaks from now on in is a care experienced social worker, and you will learn such a lot from them. I'm going to hand over to you, Mary.
Thank you, Siobhan. I thought I can't not say that that picture that you just shown, I did get the first fire up and running, and I tell everybody that, Siobhan. So I had to mention that to everybody here. And that was a quite achievable moment for me, so I was really pleased. So I do take that with my journey everywhere. Yeah, so, and it's interesting we talk about the title of my part in particular on the inside looking out, because even just hearing Siobhan tonight, I've been reflecting more and thinking actually, even Siobhan, even though Siobhan's not an insider in such as a care experience social worker, she is an insider because she was so interested into my vision and my passion and my care experience as a social worker. And it left me kind of thinking, is there many social workers that do that? And it kind of, and that's only kind of that's come to me tonight, and that makes you one of us just as much as we all are, Siobhan. And I just think that was really important to note, because as much as you're an outsider, you're an insider as well, and we all are in many ways. And the love, the book about love, it's interesting because before I become a social worker, I remember my kind of ethos being that I want professional love to come back to social work, and the whole book talks about love so much. So it obviously shares that it's such a shared view collectively. And actually, where is our professional love, and why are we leaving so many people behind? And I think what's kind of threw me before even writing the book, and it was probably my motives around it as well, and obviously when Siobhan asked me, there was an absolutely no hesitation, was the amount of students in my university journey that kind of realised I didn't share to anybody that I was care experienced till the very end. Actually, it was when I won an award and it kind of come out, and then I kind of confronted with it then. But there were so many students that kind of separately, hiddenly messaged me to say, oh, I'm care experienced, am I gonna pass, am I gonna get to the end, I don't feel I'm gonna make it, I'm not gonna make it through. And I kind of questioned why is there so much shame, where is this coming from? And obviously those that work with young people in care know that shame is one of the biggest narratives that follow them. But I think it just really heartened me that there's so much shame, and I think how do we take away some of that? And it kind of made me realise that, are we leaving some people behind? And when you look at research, you see that 70% of care experienced people go into social work, and why are we leaving so many of them behind? And some of the wonderful contributors that you'll hear from soon were in care many years ago and had totally different experiences. The whole law changed since then, and there has been movement, but still some of them have only just shared their care status, and that makes it really quite warming, really, that why is it taking such experienced social workers, and where does all them feelings come from? And I think that's really important to think about. And what conversations are we having with colleagues, and what are our conversations with managers? Do we feel supported in them sort of areas? So as you can see there, I kind of wrote on the slide how it is really a special book, and I actually carry it everywhere with me, more to promote it as much as I can. But it's such a big part of my life, and I've got so much my own sense of belonging from it. And kind of as Siobhan said, it was really interesting how, as we kind of started the shout out with the book, it was the same time that Ian kind of made this care experience association, and it was kind of like it was meant to be. And it was a time where voices need to come out. And I've worked with some incredible care experience social workers that are so insightful. They always go above and beyond, and they always kind of do that little bit extra more. And it kind of, but yet they still hold all this, I'm not good enough. And I'm still there. I mean, I speak so confidently on here, but I mean, I've experienced certain feelings and certain comments where, perhaps I was over identifying with young people because of my care experience. And some of the time it's not, it's just we care. And I think we've lost that kind of compassion and that love. And, so, and that picture is when we was on the top of the Mourns. Is it the Mourns, Siobhan? Yes. And I've always wanted to go to Ireland, so I was adamant to get a photo on the top with Siobhan, and that's hence my smiley face. So yeah, it's a really special book, and as you'll see, you'll hear, and so many of the themes will come out through everybody talking: shame, discrimination, oppression, and just such. And it made me so interested in that, especially in the association that you'll hear more about, that when we all kind of come together, we all shared such similar joys, upsets and pain, yet it's never been spoken about before. And I think this makes the book even more special. And you don't just have to be care experienced to get some form of healing from the book as well. And I think that's really important to note, that everybody in different ways can get a sense of kind of love from it. And I always say it's difficult, because I say to people enjoy, but then I think no, perhaps that's the wrong word, because it is very harrowing and it is very sad, but it's also very inspirational. And it really made me change my piece, because as Siobhan will probably agree with me, I completely and utterly changed my piece from the start. And really amended it. And that was because after going through the process of the book and reading everybody's brilliant contributions, I thought, wow, they've been so brave, so courageous and so strong to share such personal stories, that I thought, how can I not do that? So it made me kind of amend mine, and I think that's really important as well. And it's kind of like we've all got a real connection together with it, and that's really important. And yeah, so that kind of explains the process really. And before I talk, I will move on. But before I move on, I'm sure there wants to be another chance to win a book. So I will read our last question. So do fill the chat up. So me and Siobhan, of course, went for some lovely walks, and that flourished lots of conversations up in the mountains and loads of reflection, loads of discussion. So many ideas come from that. But there was only two things that kept us going. And if anybody knows Ireland really well, I'm sure you will get this right. But if you don't, maybe just guess. But there were two things that we did keep stopping for, and I was about to say something that'd give it away, but it was my favourite. So, and I think about it quite often, and I said to Siobhan, I'm going to have to come over again soon because I've kind of got a crave for it. So that's not giving any more away, but yeah, so fill the chat up, and I will now hand back to our brilliant host Dave, who will introduce the other phenomenal contributors. Thank you for joining, everyone.
Oh, thank you both. That was absolutely wonderful. And we've obviously spoken extensively, but it's still nice to hear. Just before we move on to our next incredible speaker, I forgot to mention earlier that the book has made it worldwide. Siobhan has sent the book to Australia, and we've had just, I don't know, Siobhan, like what else? This is incredible. And Siobhan thought people wouldn't really maybe understand the importance of this, but it's now going to be in shops. It's going to be in bookshops, like all of them, Siobhan, yeah?
Yeah, it's basically that we've had an order from the book wholesaler, which means it's much easier to get it in other bookshops, and it doesn't normally happen this soon that happens, but that's happened. We've sent some to the book wholesalers. It will be available from all bookshops, and we can ship. I think I've seen something in the chat saying we only ship to the UK. We do ship to everywhere, but we do ask for the postage costs to be covered because the book is done on a not-for-profit basis, and the profits that are made you'll hear about later, so we can't send it out without charging postage. So the postage costs are what's covered. So if anybody wants it sent anywhere in the world, it can be. You just need to let us know and we will tell you what the price would be to send it to there.
Legend. I just didn't want to miss that out after the chat, so apologies I didn't cover it earlier. Now, our next speaker is a legend in the care world. He was a big ringleader. I'm going with this ringleader thing. You're all ringleaders, right? Like in the Care Experience Conference pre-COVID, and I went to that and showcased my art and met so many incredible care experience people who are just doing things I hadn't even considered doing. And the one thing I'd like to say about the Care Experience Conference, there was recommendations come from consultation of care experience people. Number one on those 10 recommendations was the implementation of love in the care system. This is a growing theme throughout the whole care world. I was on the care review in Scotland, and I was on the love panel advising on how we implement love. It's such an important thing, and I think everything the Care Experience Conference achieved, Ian, was fantastic. So without further waffling, our next guest, Ian Dixon, is an absolute legend. Please put your hands together in your own room for him. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Dave. I'm Ian Dixon. I welcome the book, and I was very, very glad to contribute to it, because it's the first book ever in my experience to offer a platform to a very important minority of people who are pivotal figures in the future development of social work with children and families, the Care Experience Social Worker. This book is particularly welcome at this time, coinciding as it does with the emerging Association of Care Experienced Social Care Workers, the first ever support group for care experienced people working in social care. Why is the book important? It's important because it's given care experienced social workers a platform to share their thoughts and feelings about the role and the unique insights and pressures that they, or we as I used to be, face. Social work with children and families is an interface. It's a meeting of two very different cultures who, whether we like it or not, often find themselves in conflict. There can be suspicion, sometimes boiling over into overt hostility towards social workers and other figures in authority who find themselves having to get involved in the lives of children in care and their families, sometimes against their wishes. Social workers may be viewed as unwelcome intruders, interfering in people's lives to make them do what they don't want to do, or to check up on them. Social workers may be the ones who take children away and who act for the state against the family. They may be the ones who have to approve before people in need get much needed support. Whether they like it or not, social workers are society's soft policemen. They're there to keep people in line. Many children and families have no reason to like or to welcome social workers into their lives. It's no exaggeration to suggest that to many families, social workers are the enemy. And those feelings of suspicion and distrust are not all one-sided, no matter what social workers like to believe about their own professionalism. Most children in care are acutely aware of the stigma attached to being in care. We need look no further than the negative statistics that hang around the necks of care experienced people like a toxic necklace. I should have called my article Toxic Necklace. I like that. Care experienced people are overrepresented in the prison system. We're overrepresented on the streets. We're overrepresented amongst the unemployed, those on benefits, the homeless, and so on. We're underrepresented at universities and in the professions. We all know statistics, they bore us to death. In literature, the villains often grew up in care. In the media, care experienced people are portrayed as feckless, work shy, criminal, or inadequate. Care experienced children have often been described as feral. I've had that said to me. Social workers are part of a society that stigmatises care experienced people and are not immune to those prejudices. How many young care experienced parents are treated with suspicion by social workers who seem anxious that they might abuse their children? I mean, it's well known that children who are abused are more likely to abuse their own children, isn't it? Not where I come from, but frequently people do. To the many wonderful, loving, care experienced parents, that's profoundly insulting and hurtful. When care experienced people apply for social work jobs, how many are treated with extra caution and have to explain and explore their care experience in detail to managers who worry that it might in some way impact on their capacity to be a good social worker? And care experienced social work students report that sometimes they have more difficulty being accepted by some placements or even on some courses because managers and supervisors worry they may be unable to cope emotionally. I admit to a guilty pleasure, I've never denied being care experienced in all my years in social work. And as a social work manager and regulator, listening to professionals who didn't know me telling me about the inadequacies of children in care, I used to love to listen quietly and then tell them that I grew up in care and then watch them squirm with embarrassment. It was cruel, it was not nice, but it gave those professionals pause for thought. It seems that care experienced people like me and you somehow were not supposed to be social work managers or inspectors. Two camps, both having to coexist and work together. The social worker, the care experienced person, but both wary and distrustful of the other, often with little understanding of the other's position. How many social workers do we still come across who believe that they understand care experienced people? I don't, so perhaps they can tell me how they do that. And how many care experienced people do we come across who, because they were in care, automatically assume they can do social work better than social workers? The answer is too many. We've still got lots of work to do. Enter the care experienced social worker. The care experienced social worker is a pivotal figure, in my view. They can provide the bridge between the two communities. They can bring the deep insight based on experience of both communities, both by virtue of their unique heritage and whilst not belonging to either. They bring so much to children and family social work and are potentially a major conduit to create greater understanding between the two communities. Yet in so doing, they face many tests and challenges that other social workers don't see. Some may face emotional conflicts where they're rejected by their own families for joining the enemy, where they're distrusted by managers, tutors and colleagues. My own sister disowned me for quite a while when I got a job as a team leader in a girls' remand centre in the 80s she was still an absconder from there in her 30s. It needn't be like that. Social work at its best can make a profound difference to the lives of children in need. It can be the door that opens up a world of opportunity, hope and happiness to children who might otherwise not have it. Social work can offer a hand that supports struggling children and young people to fulfil their dreams and ambitions. And care experienced people are not the stereotypes we see on the media. We're to be found amongst all the great poets, writers, artists, lawyers, plumbers, social workers. We as a community are compassionate, creative, intelligent, and bring so much to society. Never be ashamed of who you are. Wear your heritage as a medal, not a wound. I hope and believe that the care experienced social worker embodies the best from our community. This unique book, which I thoroughly recommend, is our story, never been told before. I commend it to you. Thanks, David.
Wear your heritage as a medal, not a wound. Mate, that is a t-shirt right there. I love that. That whole talk was great, Ian. Thank you. But I honed in on those words. That was fantastic. I'm going to find a way to get that into an assignment in 4th year. I don't know how, but I'll do it. I'll do it. Thank you so much, Ian. Thank you for everything you're doing, like constantly fighting the good fight for us. So it's brilliant. And yeah, like people saying well said, if that's incredible and all that. Just to reassure people, by the way, anyone that's not on the camera is on mute. Also, some of the people on the camera are on mute. That's their choice. And also, again, I apologize. I think it's the excitement, but I forgot to say, any of the authors that are in the room tonight that aren't on the camera, if you'd like to be lifted up just to be on camera, pop your hand up and Chris will work her magic. She's like a bouncer. She's got a list of people. If you're not on it, you're not getting in. No. But if you just pop your hand up, she can do that. You don't need to say anything. If you just want to be there to show your face or whatever, then awesome. I'd just like to say once again, Ian, thanks, man. That was absolutely wonderful. It's really hard though to listen to your incredible speech while reading the chat and their guesses and trying not to laugh. Like, I would say that. So don't try and read the chat if you're listening to something serious, guys. So, but thank you so much, Ian, and thank you for being here. Can we move on to the next slide, please, Siobhan? Right. Next up, we have Kyla. When I read, I would say when I read everyone's chapter in this book, I was engrossed. I was thinking earlier when Mary was speaking about enjoy it. I think do enjoy the book, but absorb the book, I think, is what I would say. It clung to me. And I don't read. I very rarely read because I get bored fast. But this book stuck to me. And I think I really resonated with Kyla's because I've started my degree as a mature student as well. And that whole thing, but I'll let Kyla tell her own story. I'm not going to steal it from her. I just wanted to say it's a fantastic piece of work. And thank you for putting it in the book. So.
Thank you, David. I really appreciate that. I'm someone who wore that badge of shame, and I wasn't like Ian, and I didn't actually enter social work, not because I didn't want to be a social worker, but because I thought I couldn't be one because I had been in care. I had no GCSEs, I had no qualifications, and actually I hid myself for many years. I never worked my way up to management level. I would shift jobs, I would hide my lack of GCSEs and qualifications by making up things. So the fact that I was in care and the fact that I had no education sat very heavily on my shoulders and probably kept me from doing some work that I was, or reaching my potential even in my early profession, really. I had a break to have children, which was wonderful. But once I'd come back from that, the sector in which I worked had been completely decimated by austerity. And so if I went back into that, I would have had to start at the bottom again. And I was very angry at the time at the supported housing sector falling down. So I took a chance and decided to go and apply to get into university. I think for me, the thing that I wasn't expecting and really took me by surprise was that I had to declare whether I was care experienced or not. And that's not on the UCAS form where there's a box or anything like that. It was actually came on the placement form. And once I'd ticked that I'd had social work involvement, that choice of hiding was taken away from me and I was confronted with my past. That for me was horrific. I felt like I was a child again. I had no power. I felt that choices that were made for me as a child were now implicating my future. I felt that I was viewed differently by professionals. I felt that I was viewed differently by lecturers. I didn't disclose to the students in my class. I wasn't ready to really, and I didn't think it was relevant. I'd always been taught in my earlier career that you kept your personal life personal and your professional life professional, and that's the way that I'd come into social work. So when I had this choice taken out of me, it really made me have to face up to some quite upsetting things, because I think I dealt with the trauma that led to me being taken into care, but I hadn't dealt with the trauma that the system leaves you with. And entering that system as a mature student, I was confronted with some of those processes and those narratives that I think I'd really struggled with as a child. Don't get too close. You don't want to get all those sorts of attachments and things that we'll quite often say about children when they're in care. And I think that's what I found hardest. And there was a point within my second year placement where I just heard some really harmful things around care experienced parents, how we needed to watch them more, how they potentially weren't able to parent their children because they lacked their role models. And I'm sitting there as a care experienced person with children, and one of my children has got a disability, so I'm very involved with assessments and things, and thinking they're talking about me. So I was at the point of quitting. I really nearly walked out of the degree. I thought, I can't do this. I don't want to work with people where this is their narrative, because I know it's not true. And I actually thought the university were torturing me when they put me on a children looked after placement. But actually that turned out to be the blessing that I needed. I was placed with an amazing practice educator, Kate, who with her skills and observation brought to me that she thought that, that she'd worked with lots of care experienced social workers. I hadn't told her anything. That was just what her intuition and curiosity did. And she allowed me that space to sort of disclose my care heritage. And we spent time unpicking why I thought the way I did and why I felt so different from all the other social workers around me. Kate gave me the passion and the work that went on with that team to think that actually I could do it. And she was a pivotal part of my journey, and one of the reasons why I am a social worker today. And luckily, those amazing professionals that I've met have continued to show up in my life when I've needed them. Sadia, my other practice educator, again, was a wonderful support to me. And as I've now almost finished my AYSE, my practice consultant, Emma, I don't think I could have got through with the confidence and the ability to be myself. So I think that's what the book did for me. It allowed me to take back that narrative that I'd been forced to give at uni in a way that took away my power again, and allowed me to own my story. And I was lucky enough to have met Ian before the book was even online in the virtual world, before the book was even started. And we'd had lots of conversations, and I was really lucky to be involved in the social work care experience group that was being set up in the initial stages. And the feeling of belonging and strength and empowerment that gave me, just being around people who got it, who helped me belong, is something that I don't think I could ever replicate. It's so powerful when you feel so different and you feel like an insider and an outsider and you're not quite sure where you fit. So for me, it was just stripping back and not necessarily talking about my trauma or even my time in care, but just some of the things around education and some of those barriers just on entering the profession that I thought really needed to be told. And that's what my narrative was about, really, with some of those systemic barriers that I think if we all reflect on, we can remove. And I'm done, Dave, so thank you.
No. Thank you. That was really good. And yeah, I know it's your own chapter, but I think you summed it up beautifully. That thing with the self-identification is a real bugbear, because if you don't tick the box, then you're seen as being ashamed and not wanting the support. But then the university also say, if you don't tick the box, how can we support you? And it's like, well, that shouldn't be the case. Like, you should have the time to decide that, not upon application. It's a lot of pressure. So first off, proud of you. Second off, that's rubbish. But yeah, thank you again. Next up, we have my boy, David Anderson, who is an absolute legend. They're all legends, right? They're all going to get called ringleaders and legends. They are absolute legends. David can speak very eloquently by himself, so I will let him do that. But I just want to say that when I seen his name in the book, it really just reassured me, because like I hadn't really met him before that, but I knew of him, and that just emboldened my own passion to keep going. So without further sucking up, here is the legend himself, David Anderson.
Oh, thank you very much, David Grimm. Initially, when I was asked to do this panel, Mary said I would be paired up with Ian Dixon, and that really pleased me, Ian, and I'm really pleased to see you here this evening. But then I thought maybe it was because I'm the next, like the closest in proximity of age to you, so I didn't know if it was that. But I was really pleased because not only do I agree with a lot of what you say, and I love your say it as it is attitude, and I try and kind of embody that in my own way of being as well. But for another reason as well, a while ago, when I was just getting into activism, I'd seen you online, and you'd shared some of your story about being homeless, and some of your story resonated with what I said. What I'd experienced, and that came sometime after your experience, although I might be closer in age than some of the other participants. And then I had worked with people younger than me, and they were still experiencing some of the stuff that we had, and that really infuriated me, you know, and it really gave me a boost to get involved and try and push for the changes that are needed. So I'm really pleased to have been paired up with you this evening and to see you here tonight. But my chapter, when I was a kid, so I was looked after at home initially, the kind of narrative that was given to me was that I was bad just all the time. It was from teachers, from social workers, even my old granny, who loved me dearly when I got put in care, said, "Oh, what are you doing in a bad boy's home, son?" You know, so that was the kind of narrative that was out. So I felt then, and it's interesting about the name of the book, I felt like an outsider outside of society. And I took that on, as did a lot of other young boys in care at that time that I knew. And we rejected society, and we rejected it in many ways. And it was very self-destructive. But I was kind of lucky to meet some people that helped me on my way. And I got back in education. So I tried to go inside. So I was working for a charity in Scotland called Include 'em, and they gave me an opportunity, and there was no questions asked. They had at the time a very innovative approach. They had a no rejection policy to the kids that they looked after. There was no, only accepting kids that fitted into what the system's needs were. So I really, and that I was really passionate about that. They had a no rejection policy, and they were also the 24/7 policy, which meant that as a worker, we went out to young people wherever they were at whatever time the need was there. So I would career around housing estates and whatnot at all hours, and as much as some of the young people would tell you to F off, I think what I got back was that they really appreciated that you were just there for them whenever you could be, you know. So that prompted me, because I was working in social work, and I thought I should get myself educated, and I'd like to do a master in social work. So I was accepted and went on, and I had to disclose my care experience. I had some good support around me from people within my employment who were in quite prominent positions. So that kind of eased the way, I think, for me. But then, as someone else mentioned, Kyla mentioned about practice placements. You know, you have to then again disclose that, and I've mentioned it in the book. I think I'm of the opinion that once you disclose it and you've shared your history, if you're fit to go on a course, then you're fit to practice, and that should be the end of it. You should never have to go through that, reliving that story again to what are, perfect strangers, really. It should be put to bed in one fell swoop, and that should be the end of the story. And then your care experience should be something that you can just reflect on and use, as Ian so eloquently put, in your work with parents and families. So I had a great experience with, like Kyla said, a practice teacher who just got it. it didn't matter to her that I was care experience. She just supported me. She asked me back to continue some good work I'd done, and I'd done 2 placements there. And then, sorry, one of my children's just come in. I'm going to have to put you on mute because they're being very naughty, and I'm going to have to speak to them.
This is just perfect, isn't it? This is just like perfect parenting being demonstrated to us here. Just absolutely perfect.
I genuinely was expecting an animal, like a dog or something, like, but a child. I love that.
Was lovely. That was
It
really
reminds me of early pandemic when you had that news reporter whose little daughter came in. Yeah, that's what that is. Yeah, that's brilliant.
That was class. That was, wasn't it? Absolutely love that. I'd also say as well, though, that David's chapter really, I was kind of like, I followed David. When David's piece, when I was reading it, I was, as an outsider, I was reading it thinking, no, never. I was, in terms of how social work had treated David. That was my, sorry, David, whilst you've gone up. We loved the fact that your child came in there, but I just sort of stepped in to say I was so I don't know, that absorbed was a good word that Dave used earlier. When I was reading your piece, I was completely absorbed by it, and I was chatting away to you when I was just reading your piece on when it first came in. But anyway, there we go, David. I'll let you carry on. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Those boys were playing, toy fighting turned into quite violent attacks on each other. So I've just had to separate them and tell them that I'll come and speak to them soon and shout on my wife. Yeah. So anyway, I mean, the insider-outsider thing is really interesting. That's, you know. So I thought I was getting in there, and I really went into it. You know, I was like, well, I'm not rejecting. That was a very difficult process for me because I'd rejected society for such a long time, but slowly little by little, I was in there, and I was really passionate about the job, and then so I had to do the statutory placement, you know, and so I just thought, okay, you're gonna have to go through it again, blah blah blah. This is what happened. Nobody ever asked me about how I felt about being in care. It was just like, what did you do, or you know, what are the issues that can kind of affect us, you know. Not how did you feel or how were you treated or any of that stuff. So anyway, I'd done it, and then I was refused, and it was by the director of social work, and I phoned him up to try and reason with him, and I was kind of dismissed quite quickly. You know, he just didn't give me an answer, and it you know, I didn't realise. I mean, it was when I was writing it I realised what an impact it had on me. So that's what that book has done for me. You know, it's really kind of. Ian spoke about wounds earlier on. It's kind of healed that wound a little for me, that I've been able to share that. And I wrote it for two reasons. Well, a few reasons. I mean, I like writing anyway, but I thought that story needed to be heard from people in positions of power. Say, well, actually, what is social work for if it's not about giving people the opportunity, even if they've had a difficult time in their life, you know? And that question was ringing about in my head after that happened to me. Well, what is social work for then? You know, if this is what you can say to someone that's made such an effort to be an insider, you know, are you saying that I can never be inside, that I'm always an outsider? So maybe I will, but then I kind of wear that badge as well as being an outsider, with the pride that I think Ian spoke about wearing his care experience with. So. But fortunately for me, there's lots of good people in social work, and there's lots of people there who do understand that your past is not something that should inhibit you from moving on, and I was able to move on. So writing that chapter really healed that for a little bit of me. Something I didn't mention in that, like David was mentioning about the care review in Scotland. I was also involved with the care review and still am. But when I seen who was on that these panels, the person involved was on one of these panels. So I mentioned it to someone, and I mentioned it to the chief of the whole care review, and she's a very empathetic person, And she didn't just listen, she acted, and she arranged a meet. Well, she asked me if I wanted to have a meeting with this person. So this was someone who had a very high position in the social work profession. I said, yeah, and it was quite a difficult time. To walk into that meeting, but I did because I wanted to challenge him on it, and I did challenge him, and I received an apology for that. And I think at the time, because I said I questioned his appropriateness to be on that panel given my experience with him, you know, and we discussed that, and he gave me an apology, and so that was the end of that story. So I did meet him, and we did have that conversation, and I was able to say it. But back to the book, I've read one of the chapters. I haven't read it all. I'm not going to lie and say I have, but I will. And the reason is because one of the chapters that I got to had a very profound effect on me, and it made me see my whole life in a way that I maybe hadn't looked at. I hadn't looked at it like that. I maybe knew it, but I was maybe hiding it from myself. And it was about how the trauma that we've experienced, and it had a really profound effect on me. And I can't remember the author, but when I go back, I'm going to thank them for writing in that and sharing it, because it was a very heartfelt piece and it had a profound effect on me. And I think that that's what this book will do. It will have a profound effect on the people who read it, people who are care experienced, people who are in the sector. And I'm really pleased that you have done it, and I'm really proud of everyone who has participated, and also to echo the comments of the association, bringing people together and feeling like, well, some people just get it, we understand it. And the stories that I've heard of what has been happening to people and how they've been feeling has really given me the boost to get involved with doing some training with them to get to kind of broach the subject, so people aren't met with silence, and space where words and understanding can fill. So thanks. Sorry for waffling and for the interruption, but really pleased to be here. Thanks.
No, that was brilliant, and your interruption was hilarious. So thank you, and thanks, Dave. Like, I think just to reflect on your chapter real quick before we move on, what yours did for me was showed me the distinction between positive politics and negative politics. I think lots of people try and deny that social work is a political environment, but the way that person treated you during your journey to get into social work was disgusting, and it was because they were scared of how you would politically influence their career. And it really showed me the fact that I already knew, but it really hit home how negative politics can just play a part and ruin people's lives because someone's too scared to take a risk. So I think there's so much to your chapter, but I think that's a really big thing, and it really shows how social work can just be questionable. But yeah, no, thank you very much. Right, next up we have Marie, the absolute legend, that my friend from the association. Let's get going, Marie, you ledge.
Not a ringleader, so that's good. Thank you, everyone. It feels a bit surreal, really, being here. Particularly thinking about the title and what I wrote, which was largely about shame, actually, and the shame of being care experienced. And the first time I ever spoke about being care experienced and a social worker was actually finding the courage after I saw Ian's tweets when he was speaking about being care experienced and having that confidence. And I started to talk about it a little bit on Twitter. But what I daren't do was talk about it at work, because I still felt that even though I was a senior social worker, even though that I was working with children that were looked after, so we should be in a place where we feel celebrated and safe, actually didn't feel able really to share that. And this book has allowed me that space to be able to talk about both of those worlds coming together, that actually you can be a social worker and you can have a care experience just like all the other different facets, really, of our personalities, of everybody. And I guess for me, it was an interesting process writing this, because when I initially started writing it, I could only think of really negative things. I could only think of things that made me feel really sad and all these horrible things that had happened to me. But as I started going through the journey, I also realized that there was actually lots of really wonderful things about my care experience that I had and that I carry through and sort of use in my practice today, and also some of the relationships that I had built and that have really helped to sort of bring down that shame over time. And I was reading the care review, and for the first time, love was mentioned, and it really made me think about some of the love that I did experience in the care system. So I had a lovely social worker who, was there on my awful times in care, is now at the book launch, and sort of showing that actually, you can have professional love. And part of my writings was about that professional love, really, and talking about shame, about sometimes caring for people, and people would say that it was because I was care experienced that I was upset about what was happening to some of these children, and sort of people not being able to see that you can care about people and be care experienced, and that really was what my piece was about. Yeah. You want to move on to the next slide? So as Siobhan was saying, the profits of this book will be going to the Association of Care Experienced Social Care Workers, which I'm currently the chair of. I can take no praise for setting it up. It was an idea that was set up by Saskia and Mike and Ian, who came together and realised that actually what was missing from it was our voices. And trying to make a space for all of us to come together. So if you can see from our manifesto, we're actually in our infancy at the moment. We're almost a year old, and I was looking at the newsletter or the mailing list that I have, and we're on over 150 care experienced social workers at the moment that are part of the group, which is really great. And most days I get emails from people asking to be put onto the mailing list, which is really lovely, and shows that there's a real need there. And I guess for all of us, what is great about it is it's a space where you can be both people. So you can be both a social worker and care experience, and that people will understand how things are for you. You don't have to explain, and you don't have to hide anything. But equally, you don't have to share anything if you don't want to as well. We've got lots of members that actually just read the notes from our meetings and send some kind words through about how they find that comforting for them, just to even know that there is a space for them. And from that, friends have formed and supportive networks have formed. I've met and have some wonderful friends from this group now that I wouldn't have had if we didn't have this group. And with that, it brings confidence for people. It certainly brings me confidence. I'm able to say that I'm the chair, and actually heading something, it creates a conversation for me without me even saying I'm a member. So I am the chair and this is what we do, and actually we're owning that, and it is really nice to be proud about a group that, even for me, is something that I've hidden for a really long time. But to be able to talk about it, it's really empowering. So that's sort of one of our key aims. And also there's some people in the group that are heading up and starting some different areas that we're really interested in. So education, I can see in the group there that people are speaking about sort of care experience status being next to criminal convictions when we're talking about social work, and we really want to challenge that over time. And this is giving us a voice, and it's putting all of these people together with all their different experiences and connections and links and thoughts and time to come together to actually say that this isn't right, and it's something that's being allowed to carry on, because we haven't been able to come together, and we are that group now. And it's really, really nice, and it's a confidential space. So I haven't yet been to a meeting where people haven't shared some really wonderful things about their practice and their lives, but also some really difficult times, and maybe they wouldn't be able to share that and feel that safety and security that they get from this group. And I really like that there's no requirements of people other than you care experience social care worker. So you can give lots of time to it. You can tweet, you can campaign, you can be part of the videos, or you can be a silent voice, and that's completely fine as well. It's just showing people that there's a space there. So really that's what we are, that's what we're doing. There's lots of movement happening. There's lots of thoughts about how we can get our voices heard, how we can inform other people, produce some impact, some messages for people that maybe are still living in care, and sort of offer that experience for them too, and also some education. So yeah.
Well, if that's not a reason to get all your universities to buy the book, I mean, there's so many other reasons, because it's a badass book. So go to your uni and tell them you want the book in the library. Come on. But yeah, no, the association's been brilliant. I had to take a little hiatus from being involved, not because I wanted to, but because of studies. But I'm back, and we're gonna rock it. We're gonna rock it. So, yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Marie, for talking about your chapter and talking about the association. You smashed it. So, could you hit next, please, Siobhan?
Yes, I'm just wondering though, Dave, because of time, and I've seen quite a few people are needing to go, I'm just wondering whether we can go past the video that we've got now, finish up, do the answers, and then go back to the video. So I can, if I can do that, if that's okay, we can go to the video then if people have had to leave. So I'm just going to go to the answers to the questions. Here we go. Now, I've got to say to you that actually I have been smiling with some of the answers about what kept me and Mary fueled. I don't know if you saw any of those, Dave. There was a lot of Guinness. I don't know. People must have thought there was definitely Guinness.
We know you're made of Guinness, Siobhan. Come on. No.
Well, but, you know, some people know what I am made of because Helen Shepherd said cake, and it was definitely milkshake and cake. I live near a farm where you can go and buy milkshake, and honestly, Mary has now got like a thing about the milkshake at the local farm. We went out and got like a 2-litre bottle every day. That kept us going. So nothing to do with Guinness, but milkshake. Nobody got milkshake. I said to Mary, the question should be, how many litres of milkshake do you think we got through that weekend? And we couldn't remember because we drank so much of the stuff anyway. So, but the answer that I absolutely loved was Annette Fruin, who said love and passion fueled it, because actually it probably did. Love and passion did fuel it. So but Helen obviously knows us too well because she said cake. So I don't know, we're gonna have a debate about who's the winner of that question. But the other question, how many times does the word love appear in the book? Interesting, because Katie got it spot on. If we're going to be very specific, Katie said 99 times. And it does appear in the text 99 times. But if I'm being completely honest, I put 100 because it also appears once on the cover, the inside cover. So I did think if someone had said 100, we'd have gone for that. But actually, that's a really good number, isn't it? Like 99 or 100. So Katie definitely wins that copy of the book. And I think Helen
wins for cake.
And Helen wins for cake, but I also think Annette Fruin should have like a special mention because he did like that idea. So I'm going to ask Katie and Helen, if you could email us your postal address, then I've put my email address in the chat already, but I'm putting it in again. Then we will send a copy of the book to you tomorrow with love from me and Mary. And you know, you're always welcome to come and join us for milkshake and cake anytime, really, aren't you?
Just gonna say, when I come over, I'm not living on passion and love. I want milkshake and cake. Like, so
you know,
please don't promote that to everybody, because there'll be no milk left for when I come, and that would be devastating.
You do definitely need the milkshake over here. It is very good, the milkshake. So okay, We've had a few other authors join us up on screen now, and Dave, I think we were going to give people the opportunity if they wanted to say something here.
Yeah, I think it'd be really nice if people wanted to come on and talk for a moment, and then we can maybe jump back into the video, Siobhan.
Yes, and we could end with the video, couldn't we? So I don't know if anybody else does want to.
Victoria's got her hand up.
Oh, hiya.
Hi.
Yes, so I wrote the chapter Learning to Live with It. And firstly, I just want to say I am still learning to live with it. And in doing so, I've really thought about how difficult and complex this process was, and I've really reflected on what that's meant. So I'm talking about if I caught the book in the corner of my eye and in the lounge, I'd want to put it away. And I really thought about what that meant. And I think it's because when you write something, which I've done for the first time, it's permanent, and I've always been in control of my visibility as a care experienced person, and so it's been part of letting go of that control. And when I've read some of the other chapters and the need for belonging, you know, in an organisation, in a workplace, I found myself needing that belonging again. And I think one of the things that needs to come out of this is how we make ourselves visible in those organisations, because the love that I personally bring to the profession is within my team, and I see us as a little family, a work family that is inclusive. So there has been so much good that's come out of this, but you know, I'm clear that you know, thinking about personal outcomes, what it's meant, what sort of processes it's brought us to, I'm just really grateful for that. And it is permanently out there for me now, and that's part of me accepting that's who I am. So this has really took me to a new place in understanding that identity. So thanks for bringing out that courage in me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for doing it. Honestly, I just said in the chat, like, the only reason I live with it is because I've never shut up about it. Everyone knows. Everyone in Scotland knows me, I swear. But I haven't necessarily dealt with it. So I think your chapter was incredibly powerful because of that. And there's a lot of people who think they've dealt with it who haven't, and it's good to highlight that so they can. So seriously, thank you for doing it. Narg, you got your hand up. Ledge.
I'm just trying to find the unmute button. I've got it there. Hi everyone. So my name is Narges. I'm a care experience social worker, and I wrote the chapter called A Statement. It's been so insightful hearing everyone's contribution tonight, and well, some of your contributions, and the varying different perspectives of, you know, how we feel about being care experienced and within the profession. I think it's been quite eye-opening. I, like David, am unapologetically open about my care experience. I shove it in people's faces and in the organisation's faces. I will put it in my personal statement, in my CV, because quite frankly speaking, if an organisation can't accept or digest that part of me, then quite frankly speaking, I wouldn't want to work for them. And I think for me, that's been that stems from having sought asylum in the UK when I was quite young, and feeling the feeling of being an outsider from a very different perspective. And then, you know, that kind of being a double barrel when I went into care. You know, at one point you have to let go of a lot of the shame that you carry, because of it kind of really does hold you back from being the person you can be. And I used to, I've reflected quite a bit about why is it that I went into social work? And actually I went into social work like what someone else had shared, is because they thought they couldn't, because they were care experienced. I actually thought that's the only thing I can be, because I'm care experienced and I understand it. And it was the only thing I knew how to do right. And when I really thought about it, it was quite
interesting. I've never had anyone in my life tell me I can be anything I want to be. And so when I really sat down with like that feeling of being lost, not knowing what to do after I failed my GCSEs 3 times unapologetically, my A levels 3 times, and then somehow got myself into uni, and ended up with an MA in social work. I know it's horrific, it's shocking. That's when I realised I could have been, and I could have gone into any profession, but I got here, and this is my journey, and I've accepted that. But it just shows like just how much we as care experienced people need the element of affirmation that is missing even till this day. I think a lot of our pieces show elements of still not feeling accepted, still not feeling wanted in certain spaces, and that feeling never really goes away. I think we somehow need to either accept that, challenge that, and make it what we want it to be and what we're comfortable for it to be. When I first came into the social work profession, I used to think that everything's going to be really lovely, and then I realised that we have to challenge everything, and that's a difficult, pill to swallow. The feeling that you're advocating for young people, you're advocating for your families, and yet you still feel the need to advocate for yourself in a profession that you shouldn't have to feel to do that, but you do, and that can be really tiring. I think within social work, we all know what it feels like to be burnt out, and I think for those of us who are care experienced, I feel like that vulnerability kind of it is a little bit more heightened for us. So I just want to acknowledge that, and just put it out that there is no shame on how you choose to take your journey as a care experienced social worker. We all need to take it in our own pace. Some of us have the stamina to fight it unapologetically, some of us don't, and that's okay. That's absolutely fine. I think there are days where I feel so isolated in terms of how I am feeling, but then I realise that those feelings are unique to me because of the position I come, and that's okay. And I just wanted to share that.
Epic message. Epic message. A few weeks ago, probably not a few weeks ago, when we did the Care Experience One webinar, I reflected on how being unapologetically care experienced has isolated me from my entire course. I have a few friends, but I'm very much isolated. So yes, Nargis, I think it's really important. Okay, thank you guys for coming on and talking. Siobhan, do we have time to show Richard's video? Yes.
I think so. I think what we're going to do, David, I'm going to suggest now that we'll play the video, and if people are wanting to leave because we know, we've overrun a little bit, then that's fine. But also we'll leave the session open tonight, because it may be at the end that people do just want to debrief, just a little talk about how things have felt, because as you said at the beginning, things can be tricky when we're talking about some of the things that we've talked about and some of the profound impact that some of this book will have had. So for people to feel free to go when they want to go, you'll be able to watch this video later if you wanted to, or we'll just end on the video now. Is that all right, Dave?
Absolutely. Richard couldn't be with us, but he, again, is incredible. Go and check his Twitter, check everything he does. He's just so powerful. Yeah.
Here we go.
Hi everyone, my name is Richard Devine. I'm a social worker for Bath and North East Somerset Council. I'm really sorry I couldn't be there tonight in person, well, virtual person, so I prepared this short presentation about my contribution to the book. First though, before I get into that, I just wanted to say that I've had a chance to read the book and I was blown away by the contributions within it. In my opinion, there's chapter after chapter of thoughtful, insightful, thought-provoking, commentary, poetry and essays from a wide range of individuals who've had experience of the care system and who are now in some shape or form working for social care. And the book brought up a lot of emotions for me, and I was just taken back by the level of vulnerability and honesty that was shown by many of the contributors. So I'll just give you a brief kind of summary of my chapter, and I'll begin by reading the first paragraph. So when my dad was 8 years old, police officers and social workers rushed into his home, and he immediately ran under the cubbyhole in absolute terror. I can imagine a little boy tucked away and hidden in a dark corner, pulse racing, adrenaline saturating his body, eyes wide, hearing highly sensitive to any impending danger. Suddenly, a hand reached in to grab hold of him. Out of fear and panic, he resorted to animalistic self-protection and bit the person. He was eventually dragged out from underneath the cubbyhole. He and his brother and sisters were photographed by the police before being separated and placed into care. And so before this had happened, my dad's mum had already left the family home. His dad was left with the care of him and his siblings, but he abused one of his sisters, and then he was removed suddenly and unexpectedly. He went to 27 different schools, multiple different care homes, and by the time he left childhood and entered into adulthood, I think he was angry, fearful, impulsive, and addicted to drugs and alcohol. And it wouldn't be until he was in his 30s that he would achieve sobriety after attending a rehabilitation centre for the first time. And it was during that time that I was born. And so for the first few years of my life, my dad was clean. He'd gone to college, he went to university, he became a social worker. Unfortunately, that wasn't to last, and he relapsed into drug and alcohol, heavy drug and alcohol use. And then he died when I was 16 years old. And after he died, I remember asking my mum, "Oh, why did Dad become a social worker?" And she replied something to the effect that he wanted to prevent what happened to him happening from others. And I felt sad in that moment on his behalf that he wasn't able to fulfill that ambition. And probably because I had learned as a result of his drug use to be more attentive to his needs and wishes and desires, I decided in that moment that I would finish what he was unable to. And so that was what I did. I went into social work, and I took into the job and the role a passionate desire to help others. But like my dad, I also had feelings of inadequacy and shame that were generated from my childhood experiences. In part, the experience of him using drugs and alcohol not being available for me. And eventually I came to the realization that I needed help to process some of these feelings, and I was luckily able to get some help from a brilliant organisation called Concord, and I was able to overcome some of the internal negative ideas and beliefs that I developed about myself. And so my chapter is about my dad's experiences, the impact that that had, both positive and negative, and the attempts and my endeavour to overcome some of the lasting effects of those kind of experiences. So it's about social work, it's about shame, and it's about transformation. And then a final point I just wanted to make is about the power of writing and reading and sharing stories such as the one contained in this book. Because I think that we often think that our flaws, inadequacies, or feelings of despair are unique to us. And that can often isolate us from others and cause shame, because we think that nobody is uniquely pathological or dysfunctional, as morbid as we are. And it's often a great relief to find out that your experiences have been shared by others. And so sharing stories about the most intimate and raw emotions underneath experiences, so we might not have the same experiences, but we often have the same feelings, allows us, I think, to recognise our shared humanity, our shared vulnerabilities, and our universal need for love, connection, and meaning. And I think that's in that space is where we can truly meet one another. And so that's what I think this book offers us. Finally, a huge thank you to Siobhan and Mary, who I know have worked relentlessly and tirelessly to produce this brilliant and wonderful book. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the presentations and the rest of the evening. Thank you.
Huge thank you to Mary and Siobhan. Boom. Love it. Yes.
Hi.